My husband faked a promotion to make me feel small, then spent months mocking my job, saying you're lucky I let you work. 7 months later, I was the one giving him instructions at his new workplace. Warren and I met in 2010 at a leadership retreat in Chicago. He worked for a logistics company, kind of middle management. I was just starting to get into talent development. He was charming, quick-witted, and knew how to work a room. He made everyone feel like they were the most interesting person at the table. When we got married a year later, I thought I hit the jackpot. He moved to Minneapolis with me, and we bought a 3-bedroom in Edina, just outside the city. It was nice, nothing extravagant, but it had a cozy fireplace and a backyard big enough for summer BBQs. For the first few years, things were good. We both worked full-time, made decent money, and split responsibilities pretty evenly. Warren was ambitious, always talking about climbing the ladder, becoming a VP before 40. I admired that. But around year 9 or 10, something shifted. Not overnight. It crept in slowly, like mold behind wallpaper. It started when I got a promotion at my job. I'd been grinding at this company for almost 8 years and finally got bumped up to director. It came with more visibility, a seat at senior leadership meetings, and a healthy pay increase. I was proud. Really proud. When I told Warren, he smiled. Said he was happy for me. But the energy was off. You know when someone says the right words, but their eyes are doing something else? He avoided talking about it after that day. And then the small comments started. You're gone late a lot lately. Do you really need to be doing that much extra? Or, they promoted you fast. Must have been looking to fill a diversity quota. That one stung. He played it off as a joke, but there was always this undercurrent of resentment. Like my success somehow highlighted his stagnation. Then, one random Tuesday in March, he came home from work carrying a bottle of champagne. I remember I was making dinner, pasta and roasted veggies. He walked in all smiles and said, "I've got news." "What is it?" I asked, assuming maybe he landed a project or bonus. "I've been promoted," he said, setting the champagne down dramatically. "Regional Vice President. Starts Monday." Wow. I was shocked. I didn't even know a position like that was open. "That's amazing, Warren. Congratulations." He nodded, real slow, like he'd just been knighted. It's about time they recognized me. That night, we celebrated. He ordered in from our favorite Thai spot, opened the champagne, and talked about his new responsibilities. I asked questions, how many teams he'd manage, where he'd be based, what kind of travel it would involve. His answers were vague but believable. Over the next few weeks, he bought new suits. Claimed he needed to look the part. Started leaving earlier, coming home later. Said he was visiting offices in Duluth, sometimes even Madison. I asked about hotels, expenses, and his schedule, but he always had some answer that sounded just plausible enough. Then came the attitude shift. Subtle at first, but unmistakable. "I don't know why you keep working so hard," he said one evening. "You're lucky I let you keep your job." He said it casually, like he was talking about letting me borrow his jacket. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "I'm serious," he added. "You don't have to work." "Not anymore." "You make what, half of what I do now?" I didn't respond. I just got up and cleared my plate. But inside, something cracked. It became a pattern. Little digs. Jabs during dinner with friends about my soft job. "You basically babysit grown-ups," he told someone once. PowerPoint presentations and icebreaker games. Real hard work. People laughed, but not comfortably. By summer, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. He wasn't bringing home any work documents, no emails, no client calls I could overhear. He used to vent about coworkers or ask for advice about managing difficult team dynamics. But now? Radio silence. I started asking around. I messaged a former coworker of his on LinkedIn, Zach. We'd met once at a company event. I kept it casual. Hey, just heard Warren got promoted to RVP, so exciting. Have you crossed paths with him recently? Zach replied within minutes. RVP? No way. Warren left the company in April. Haven't seen him since. Thought he moved on? I stared at that message for a full minute. April. It was now June. He'd been pretending to go to work for months. Faking a job. A promotion. That night, I waited for him to come home. He strolled in just before 8 p.m. Suit jacket slung over his shoulder. Tie loosened. I asked directly, "Are you still working at Cargill?" He paused, then gave me a smirk. What kind of question is that? I talked to someone. I know you left. I know you never got promoted. That smirk dropped fast. He didn't even try to deny it for long. Said things had gotten complicated at work. That he thought he'd find something new quickly. That he didn't want to worry me. Then he got defensive. Angry, even. You should have just trusted me, he said. I was going to fix it. I didn't want to look weak. We're married, Warren. You don't fake an entire career to protect your ego. He didn't sleep in the bedroom that night. A week later, he moved out. I filed for divorce 3 days after he left. We didn't have kids, which made the legal side easier. Emotionally, though, I felt hollow. I kept working, because it was all I could do. Wake up. Go to work. Train new hires. Manage projects. Build strategy decks. Breathe. Repeat. In December, I took a short-term contract with a growing health tech company in Bloomington. They were going through a full restructure and needed someone to train their incoming teams. On the first day of onboarding, I walked into a mid-sized conference room with 15 people already seated. I passed out packets and introduced myself. And that's when I saw him. Warren. In the back row. Pale. Wearing a rumpled suit I recognized from a clearance rack at Kohl's. He looked up, and for a second, I saw panic in his eyes. Pure, undiluted panic. Like he was sitting in a dream gone horribly wrong. I took a deep breath. Smiled. Good morning, everyone. I'm Anika. I'll be leading your onboarding and training for the next few weeks. He didn't say a word. And I didn't treat him any differently. I kept everything professional. Clean. Direct. I taught the sessions like I always did, clear structure, practical takeaways, space for questions. But every time I handed out worksheets or explained a process, I could feel his discomfort. He avoided eye contact. Never asked questions. Took notes like a robot. It was poetic. The man who once mocked me for making PowerPoints now had to sit through every one I made. And this? This wasn't even the end. By the second week of training, I started noticing little things about Warren's behavior. He would come in right on the dot, not a minute early. Sat in the same seat. Never made conversation with the others unless spoken to directly. There was no trace of the man who used to command rooms, make jokes, dominate dinner parties. The group I was training was a mix of new grads, career shifters, and mid-level hires. Most of them were curious, eager to learn. They asked questions, they participated in the breakout exercises. They looked at me with interest and respect. Warren? He looked at his notepad. Mostly stared at his hands. I wondered what story he told himself to get through those days. Did he spin some lie about how I ended up in that role? Did he tell people we used to be married? Or did he hope nobody noticed? He didn't use his full name on the company portal, just W. Price. That didn't surprise me. And still, I kept it professional. Coldly polite, even. Every now and then, he would mumble a quick thanks after a session. Or give a nod when I handed out materials. But that was it. We never spoke beyond what was necessary for the training. One afternoon, during a break, I overheard two of the other new hires chatting near the coffee machine. "Did you notice W hasn't said a word all week?" "Yeah." I asked if he wanted to team up for the mock case study and he said, "I'd rather work alone." Weird vibe, man. I didn't say anything. I just poured my coffee and went back to reviewing my notes. But part of me wanted to scream, this man spent the better part of a year tearing down my work, my worth, and now he won't even make eye contact. The third week of training was when the team started actual hands-on project work. I'd structured a simulation that required everyone to apply what they'd learned, managing timelines, budgeting, delegation, using the new systems. I paired them up intentionally. I didn't give Warren the option of working alone. He ended up with a woman named Selena, a sharp, organized woman in her early 50s who had just transitioned from retail management. She had zero patience for half-effort. And she didn't know who Warren was to me. On the second day of the project, Selena came up to me privately. "Anika," she said gently, "I'm not sure what to do. My partner, W, he's not contributing. I've asked him to take on parts of the report, but he keeps saying he needs more time to review the materials." I nodded. "Thanks for letting me know. I'll check in with him." I did. Pulled him aside after lunch. I kept my tone neutral. "Warren, I need you to be more present during the project simulation. Your partners expressed concern about your engagement." He looked at me with that old flicker of indignation, like I'd just insulted him. But it died quickly. He nodded and mumbled something about trying harder. Later that day, I saw him typing furiously on his laptop. Probably trying to salvage his part of the assignment. By the end of that week, the simulation reports were due. The pair presentations were scheduled for Friday morning. Warren and Selena went third. Selena carried most of the presentation, confident, clear, to the point. When it was Warren's turn, he fumbled. He forgot key terms, had no visuals, stumbled through the summary. There was a long silence when they finished. Not judgmental, just awkward. I thanked them and moved on. Gave the same feedback I'd give anyone. Told them where they could improve, noted the strengths, asked follow-up questions. But inside? It was surreal. Not satisfying, not really. Just surreal. This man used to strut around our house calling my work fluff. Mocking the fact that I worked with the kind of people who needed instructions to use Microsoft Teams. Now, here he was, struggling to summarize a basic planning model I'd taught the group on day 4. Week 4 was the final stretch. Evaluations, wrap-ups, HR follow-ups. I had one-on-one check-ins with every team member. 15-minute sessions to talk about how they felt about training, what they needed going forward. Warren signed up for the last available slot. Late Friday afternoon. He walked in right on time. Sat down across from me. His hands were folded tight in his lap. I did what I always did, asked him about the training experience, what feedback he had, what he wanted to focus on as he transitioned to his team. He answered with short phrases. Didn't make eye contact. Finally, I asked, "Anything else you want to share?" He looked up then. For the first time all month, really looked at me. "I didn't expect this," he said quietly. I didn't respond. "I didn't know you were here." When I applied. I nodded. "I figured." He hesitated. "You've done well." I let the silence sit for a second. Then I said, "I know." He gave a tight smile. Not sarcastic. Almost defeated. The meeting ended without ceremony. No dramatic apology. No attempt to reconnect. Just two people who used to know each other, now sitting on opposite sides of something that couldn't be fixed. After the final day, he didn't return for the company welcome event. I heard later he switched to another department, data entry, something far removed from the client-facing projects. I never saw him in the building again. And honestly, I didn't look. Because here's the thing, this whole experience wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about truth, how it always, eventually, comes out. And it was about reclaiming something I didn't realize I'd let him take, my pride. But that wasn't the end of the unraveling. Because a few weeks later, I got a message. From someone I didn't expect. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I had just finished facilitating a leadership development workshop for a group of mid-level managers. I was mentally drained, the kind of tired that lingers behind your eyes and settles in your shoulders. I got back to my desk, opened my inbox to skim through a few remaining emails, and saw it. Subject: Hey. Can we talk? It was from Leona, Warren's younger sister. Now, I hadn't heard from Leona in over a year, maybe longer. She and I were never exactly close, but we got along. She'd always been friendly, respectful, someone I thought was maybe a little too forgiving of her brother, but not malicious. I hovered over the message for a few seconds before opening it. Hi Anika, I hope this isn't too weird. I know it's been a long time. I wasn't sure if I should even reach out, but I figured I'd regret not saying something. I just found out about what happened with you and Warren, and, wow. I had no idea. I wish I'd known sooner. If you're open to talking, even for a few minutes, I'd appreciate it. I don't need details, I promise. I'm trying to understand some things. Leona. I stared at the screen for a long time. There were 100 reasons to ignore that message. But something in the tone, hesitant, raw, unfinished, hooked me. So I replied. Hi Leona, I appreciate you reaching out. Sure, I'm open to talking. Maybe a quick call this week? Let me know what works. We ended up scheduling a call for the next evening. She sounded nervous when she answered. I could hear her pacing, floorboards creaking, occasional background noise from what sounded like a dog barking. Thanks for doing this, she started. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. It's okay, I said. What's going on? There was a pause. Then she let out a sigh that felt like it had been building for months. I found out Warren's been lying to us. For years, I think. I didn't respond. I let her talk. She explained how Warren had told the entire family he was promoted, just like he told me. Said he was making 6 figures, had a company car, some vague mention of regional expansion and executive oversight. He told their parents he was thinking about investing in real estate and even offered to help Leona out financially after she lost her job during the pandemic. He never followed through, of course. But he made a lot of promises. When he stopped returning my calls a few months ago, I thought maybe he was just busy, she said. Then I ran into someone who used to work with him, and it all unraveled. One person told me he left the company. Another said he'd been let go almost a year ago. No one had anything good to say. I stayed quiet, just letting her talk. And then, she said more softly, someone at a networking event mentioned they'd been through training with you at a tech firm. I didn't connect the dots at first. But when I asked what company, and what month, I knew. There was another pause. Did he really lie to your face for that long? Yes, I said. He did. And he mocked me in the process. Leona was quiet for a while. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. I always thought you were the strong one. He used to talk about how tough you were. I didn't realize that was his way of downplaying you. I didn't know how to respond to that. She asked about the divorce. I kept the details simple. Told her it was final. That there wasn't much more to say. That I'd moved on professionally and personally. And that I didn't hate him, I just didn't trust him. Not anymore. Before we hung up, she said, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I really am. After we ended the call, I sat on the couch in my living room, the quiet pressing in like heavy air. I hadn't thought about Warren's family since the separation. I figured they either believed his version of things or were content not knowing the full story. But now it seemed like the cracks were spreading, slowly, quietly, through the foundation of every lie he'd built. It wasn't satisfying, not exactly. There was no victory in watching his world collapse. But there was something settling. A kind of closure I didn't know I needed. Still, life has a strange way of weaving unfinished threads into the fabric of your future. Because just when I thought the story had settled down, I received another message. This time, it wasn't from a family member. It was from HR. Subject: need a quick chat a concern from one of the new hires. I didn't think much of it at first. Honestly, I figured maybe someone had misunderstood one of my workshop policies, or perhaps it was just paperwork related. HR emails were routine when you handled training for dozens of employees every quarter. We scheduled a meeting for Friday morning. Delia came in with her usual calm demeanor, polite smile, hair neatly pulled back, clipboard in hand. She didn't dance around it. "We received a complaint," she said, "from a new hire, Warren Price." I blinked. "Okay. He's alleging a conflict of interest, that you conducted training for a former spouse, and that the environment may not have been impartial." I didn't say anything for a moment. Delia leaned forward, choosing her words carefully. "Anika, I want you to know, we've reviewed the materials. Your evaluations from other trainees. Feedback forms. All of it." "And?" I asked, folding my hands in my lap. She gave a small smile. "All of it reflects professionalism, consistency, and zero indication of bias. Frankly, your evaluations are some of the best we've received." I nodded, letting her continue. "We also pulled up Warren's performance. He underdelivered across the board. Missed deadlines during the onboarding simulation. Multiple peers expressed frustration with his lack of engagement. So, what happens now?" She hesitated for a split second. "He's being reassigned to a probationary support role, pending further review. He'll no longer be under your training pipeline or any leadership development path." Translation: they benched him. Not fired, yet, but sidelined. Out of sight. Out of my jurisdiction. And the cherry on top? He tried to use our past, his lie, as leverage to get me in trouble. To flip the script. To make me look unprofessional. But instead, he exposed himself further. After the meeting, I sat in my car in the parking garage for a few minutes, letting it sink in. I wasn't angry. I didn't even feel smug. I just felt done. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into my work. The contract wrapped up successfully. My team was retained for extended consulting, and I was offered a senior advisory role on a project with even bigger scope. One that involved collaborating with other companies across the region. I didn't see Warren again. Until April. I had been invited to speak at a leadership summit hosted by a local nonprofit in St. Paul. The kind of event where HR directors, executive coaches, and senior consultants gather to exchange ideas, pitch workshops, and talk about the future of workplace development. I was one of the keynote speakers. My topic? Integrity in leadership, cultivating trust in a post-crisis world. Yeah. That was deliberate. I stood up there, in front of a room full of leaders, managers, and educators, and I told them about truth. About quiet egos and loud work. About how sometimes, the most valuable thing a leader can do is not take up space, but make space for others to grow. And at the back of the room, I saw him. Warren. He was seated off to the side, looking like a man who hadn't fully unpacked the reality of his own decisions. He didn't try to talk to me. Didn't come up afterward. He just sat there, watching me speak from a stage he once insisted I didn't belong on. I didn't acknowledge him. I didn't need to. Because the difference between us now was clear. I had grown. Stepped into my power, led with honesty, weathered humiliation, and still stood tall. He'd lied, lost, and tried to drag me down with him. And he failed. I left that summit with a full heart and an invitation to speak at 2 more events. I walked out of that building into the spring air, feeling light, like I had finally finished carrying the weight of everything he put on me. He tried to control me by making me feel small. But the truth is, the whole time I was learning how to rise. And when I rose, I didn't need to destroy him. He did that all on his own.